Whoa, you're Liv. You're Liv too. Not live enough. What up, fam jam? Hi, my name's Elliot, and I don't like to wear shirts or clothes for that matter. Pretty much the least as possible at all times. And that might be the exact same as you. It might be very different. But it's July, and it's warm outside. It's warm inside. And we all just need to be a lot more naked, which might be the underlying theme of every single thing I ever say. Get more nude. You're beautiful. Just be that. Ugh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Enough intro um, jibber jabber, jabberwocky. The reason that I'm making this video is because I want to take a break from putting things together or letting things go. And I ain't got no one to talk to but you, which suits me just fine. In fact, I count myself lucky for it because I didn't always have you in this frame of mind. I watched The Matrix again recently. It's probably the movie that I've seen the most. And for reference, I'm not a person that watches the same movie more than once, religiously, but I'm also the same person that can watch a movie and then watch it again, right after, and pretty much enjoy it to the same extent. I love seeing and things and noticing and just thinking things differently the different time that I kind of see it. But also, I've never been that person that's I can't quote shit. I can retell stories, but I'm really awful at remembering the exact words of anything, even including myself. And I grew up with The Simpsons, and so I grew up with a generation of kids and people that quote The Simpsons and or anything, and I'm just oh yeah, I kind of remember that, or I totally remember that. I couldn't tell you that, but now that you mentioned it, it's yeah, I was there. So when I watch a movie, I more or less know what's going to happen because I've seen it before, but I'm not there yet. So I don't know. My memory doesn't work like that. Thank goodness. And seeing The Matrix again, it's actually been a while. It's really within this new adventured state of mind has given rise to some deeper realizations and ways of putting things into words, but also ways that things have been put into words for me to translate and choose. And that brings me to The Matrix, and maybe the theme of this talk a little bit with the whole grain of thinking, which is choice. If you haven't seen The Matrix, there's no possible way that it hasn't already been ruined for you, if such a thing is possible. Because knowing how it ends is not the same as watching it from the beginning. And that is the most true for quite possibly absolutely everything. but the long and short of it, the Matrix and also the trilogy, but I'm focusing more on just the first one, is the Matrix is this fake world, and they made it all kinds of like utopia, and basically the human consciousness did not buy it. So instead, they make it basically the 90s, the end of the 90s, which is like, I would say, the like optimum balance of like idealism, pseudo freedom, and bullshit. As far as like our modern, like modern history, the shit that we were alive for, so we can be sure about culture, cultural history, and but ultimately, inevitably, indubitably, architecturally, structurally, magnanimously, magically, and I'm just fucking saying it. Some there's the thing with the algorithm of this program is inevitably. I mean, part of it is like to be miserable. So it's not a utopia society, basically. So the happiness isn't being like forced upon us, which then creates its opposition, right? It's resistance. We exist upon that which we resist, and but it's like a cataclysmic failure pretty much every time. But in this kind of world where you can more or less choose the kind of happiness, so long as you're in control, then the matrix proliferates until there's an individuation that's like, actually, it's the control that I say no to. It's the control that I see. And so I say no to that, and that will inevitably happen as a representation of the truth, because they are being harvested for energy, humans, against their will. So it's like this freedom, this free will of being a battery, of like consenting to not choosing, is of course a choice. And inevitably, as a representation of the whole, there would be a choice that says no and keep saying no, because they've already said yes to something greater than themselves, as them. And actually, the Matrix is like the story of that realization and returning to like an as themselves. So let me say it again. It's like, with it, because of the conscious, the low level, yet but conscious and fundamental choice of yes to something greater than themselves in their perception, which I want to say is um, fairness. I'm trying to hit something more superficial than love, because I'm trying to think of like Thomas Anderson. Like, is love spurring his movement then? Well, yes, love moves everything. Love is the movement. But at that point, it's evidencing itself more as like I can't even love. I'm a slave. Just fuck this. No, no, it's not fair. It shouldn't be this hard. And so that gave me cause to consider the brilliance of creation and each other, and how we manifest as art, movie, pretty smile, laughter, gasping, and the conundrum of, okay, so I'm everything, and I'm one, I am everything, and then I'm going to individuate within myself, but I'm one, I'm everything. So that's free will. But then how, because there's only me, but how then can any aspect of my being find individual expression if fundamentally, like at its most stripped bare nakedness, that individuation doesn't know its choice? Like, how do you hide free will from yourself within yourself to discover it and then actually exhibit it as a real thing, distinct from like the cosmic free will? Like, what you're hearing is literally is the conundrum. It's like it gets kind of confusing, or at least a challenge. So the problem is choice. The problem to the matrix, to the machines, the controller, aspect or energy, whatever. And so they create these like hierarchies and tiers of manipulation. Because I think like the more or less quote is like, you can't. The problem is choice, but the choice itself is something that can be foreseen, so it's not beyond a measure of control. And while that hints to like the almost like insidious nature of the controller, it's actually a greater like nod to the creator, because ultimately everything, nothing, no thing is beyond a measure of control by the divine will of loving, in my perception. Neo is the sixth son, and the whole trilogy is just steeped in references to mythology and symbolism that even like, and this is true for most fiction, everything is real. Everything has been, was, or will be, at least in a matter of forming or unforming. And that might be a little esoteric, but that just means a simplicity of truth that has been so well hidden that it's now hard to understand because the language of its understanding has become mysterious. So this sixth son is this sixth iteration of this measure of control, which lends itself to the illusion of a repetitious cycle, but there is no such thing as something that repeats itself precisely the same way. A simple way of just using that, looking at that in this kind of matrix examination kind of way, is with every cycle or recycling of of humanity in the system of control, what's changing is what's changing that's being highly measured is the generational shifting of the literal humanity. The first through fifth ones or sons return to the matrix. They choose, amongst their peers who will repopulate, yabba yabba. So there is an there is a known change, what's not beheld because their perspective is limited. It's the machines themselves are generationally changing in ways um, that they're under the illusion that they're not. I.e., like the architect being like, I am unchanging, I am ever persistent, I am this, you are that, this is the way that it is. In even my own surprises, I like I understand and can rationally foretell. Yeah, but you're just rationaling the fact that you fucking changed and you can't control it. So in this like final iteration of the storyline arc or the story arc of the Matrix, as Neo, as Thomas Anderson, as Keanu Reeves, as what his choice is modified by his connection, his attachment, his choosing to persist, not being generalized to humanity or life in its kind of like non-personal identity, but instead through his love with Trinity, through his like partnership. And that's always really struck a chord with me because I've never really, quite frankly, given a fuck about too much about most people. And what I mean is, I've just always really cared deeply for each person. It's like that bullshit mind washing thought experiment. It's like you're in a car, or the car is being driven by a robot, which is like AI. This is the most recent version of that thought experiment. Um, and you can, if you go straight, you know, you'll hit one person. If you turn, um, you'll hit, you'll swerve and you'll hit five. But the five are saints, and the one's a murderer. So what do you do? Do you hit the one that's a murderer, or do you, or if you're the one, do you choose to die? Um, and like there's some arbitrary answer, and now the illusion of the that thought experiment that is being called to question is um, that you can't know. It's like oh, whoa, like what? There's no right answer. It calls into question the great, um, the grand question of like, or maybe the grand like yoke. I'm saving that word for the goodness. Um, Collar, harness, which is like what's good. Doing what's perpetually good for the greater good, the greater whole, the most people, and what it's hiding most cleverly is the truth that one one person matters. Every one person matters, and also there's no right answer to any of those things because there's always only the right answer in the moment, and that what happens in the moment is is truly the right answer and is never separate from all the other conditions of that choice. So going back to the Matrix, what's different about Neo is his connection um, with Trinity, I don't know I've gone in a bit of a ramble, but I'll try and tie it all back together. And why that's important is because it doesn't disqualify his connection with or care for everybody else. Of course, it's the complete opposite. He's gone deeper. He's made like a further distinction of awareness, of connection, of being, and therefore the choice that that less awareness has led to saying yes. He said no, that's not fucking good enough. Because so what? I'll die, they'll die, she'll die. No. But humanity gets to live on? No. Humanity's not getting to live on because we're not living on. And more importantly, she's not living on. And if she doesn't get to live on, then fuck you. I'm gonna go tear some shit up. And who knows? Maybe it'll all blow up. But that doesn't change the truth of the choice that I've already made, which is not, this is not good enough. But when good enough is like the grand divinity, the awareness of all, and that ultimately, like maybe like you're one's like the one source creation's control of everything, then then choice disappears. So where do you strike the balance? I trend towards starting at the end of everything and then working my way backwards and then skipping to the front and then moving forward with what I knew and then kind of hopping until I meet somewhere in the middle, which is basically accomplishment. And in that regard, when The Matrix, and I don't mean the movie because it's universally beloved, but this reality comes under such flack, such like hate and detest, I can't help but try to find what's right about it. Because as sparse as it's been, I'm motivated to live because of what I've found is right about it. Even as a younger person in this body and not really knowing or experiencing even just like the more like like physical representations of it. It's just, just the more tangible aspects of like love and kindness and connecting with people. It's like it's been kind of a rare thing for me by soul choice, clearly, or soul designation. The truth of a rightness has always been a part of me. So I can't just say down with the matrix or down with systems. What's right about it? How could it be right? Which leads me to like the scary question or the dangerous noodling, which is When do we choose control? Because we all kind of aim for self control, don't we? Self mastery. We don't want to be aimless. We don't want to be controlled by others. Freedom, in and of itself, has come to be appreciated as some kind of, well, you're able to do what you want. We'll do what you want. So you can control yourself. And then I'll give you a little skip to the head. That's actually really funny. Spiritual insight um, is like absconding control to our higher ephemeral light direction is in part releasing control and also only part of our choice of control. Now, I've kind of been a little wordy, but have you met me? My name is Elliot. There's two L's, two T's, and a lot of words in me. But this is us having a conversation. There's no speech. I didn't write this down. And even if I did, my writing would be wordy. Because that's why we're close. It's just fun to undress. How do you create a matrix, a place where anything is possible, where what becomes possible is the greatest? And what's can be seen as control is also true. Because in the movie, as in our reality, the issue with the illusion is that it's based on falseness, falsity. I can't abide that. If you're watching this, neither can you. But the thought of a kind of control being true, well, we've been well conditioned to not so much fear that, but certainly be weary of it. And like fairly, we can be weary of anything more. I think that's self responsibility. And I don't know, I just want to kind of skip to the end. The opportunity of the matrix, of this place that we live in, is to choose what we yoke to. We choose what gets yoked. In our system of control, what is the controller? And when we say no to anything but love, and then yes to everything that's loving, then you're damn right, we are subjugating ourselves to a system of control. And we can only choose a system of control within a greater system of control. The measure of. and what brings everything together. Every dimension, every plane, every time, every being is when we all say yes to compatible tiers, systems, matrices of control. Matriarchy? Matrices? And that at least in this time spell, dreaming, the sixth sun, the sixth one, it's not freedom, it's not power, it's not free will. It's not the pattern, it's not what it looks like. It's free love. Which isn't as much handed out or given away as much as allowed to move with ease, to move freely. That the dominant motivation of the energy of this newest iteration of our field is dominated, domained, free domained, ordained by the extent by which the movement of loving is justice. Well, I think that that might be the most magical thing. It's because, for the sake of linearity and time and being expansion, there is this grandest veil, perhaps, that can make this feel on as many dimensions as we can perceive that we're doing something different, something new that hasn't really ever happened before. It's been attempted, well, 5 times and however many times before. And maybe sometimes successfully, but just to a lesser degree. To have love, loving you, loving me, be the main thing. So fuck, control me. I surrender. But this is how. This is what I'll say yes to. Loving, and not through trials and tribulation. Definitely not anymore. Maybe yes, but we've checked that fucking box. Loving easily, loving grandly, loving like you think you can know everything. You think like Nothing new can happen. Well, I'm going to prove to you that we can love better than we ever knew possible in every scheme of being. I conspire to unloving higher and higher, which also means lower and lower. Because if you build, if you add to the top, it's higher, but if you add to the bottom, it's higher too. More and more. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Because I love you. That's why you're ending. That's why I'm going. Going where? I love you. What do you mean, Elliot? I love you. Elliot, everything can't be I love you. Says you. But I love you. Namaste. I love you.